Everything happens in a quantified historical time and a targeted geography. Beirut, autumn 2008, winter 2009. The Lebanese government is planning to build in its capital an art centre and a cultural centre on a site destroyed by years of civil war. Postmodern knowledge is still in the lap of modern reason and its quest to solve the growing organic complexities in a system incorporating the difference, echoing the disjunctive synthesis of a capitalist age. In the fashionable field of cybernetics, the Western miracle moves the misfortune of war as far away as possible. Its bubbles are becoming more and more paranoid in the subjectivities of people and state apparatus alike, all operating in fields of controls and identifications of the flows of things and propositions which are more and more subordinate. The transversality of forms of knowledge shared in the thought process in architecture and urbanism is bringing forth this cognitive groundswell which runs through the intelligibility of all Western propositions. The cybernetic empire finds its way into the smallest folds of reason. Architecture can be something other than the functional manifestation in which the context remains an orientation, subject to a fashionable vision which tucks suffering into the hold of a better future. Architecture can refrain from being the manifestation of a narrative subsuming modernity in a programmatic maelstrom. Contextuality and congestion, these two now imperious formulations of knowledge about architecture, deal with a here and now with occasional linguistic rules of play, and are less part of a questioning of the process of thinking than of an opportunity to precipitate spatial production into the tumult of novelty. New systematic ways of thinking are at work in the field of architectural knowledge. To explain the new totalities which man has lost hope of finding, our occupation is to experiment with constitutions freed from all formulations legislated by mechanisms of reason, albeit confused in the deafening white noise coming from the mass of knowledge which is stored and communicable. The object of the architecture of this centre is not to put on trial the representation of the world, draw an allegory of complexity, or incorporate chaos within a spatial system. The method of experimentation seeks a constitution peculiar to an organization in a gust of intentions, precisely where meaning is separated from all form of significations. In a policy of idleness which brings us close to Blanchot and Burroughs, in a strategy of nomadic distribution of meaning, things and their meaning are distributed in an open space, while integrating reason continues to distribute things and their meaning in a closed space. All that endures is the event of genesis prior to the silence of significations in the machine of spatial arrangements and perceptible surroundings. Onto the functional program of this machine, we overlay a program of consistency. The organs are organized on 4 surfaces, marking the boundaries of the terrain. Affixed to them are the different ensembles. On these planes, populations of organs prepare to spread and people the environment. On these 4 expanses, the effects are distributed. The effect tirelessly mixes perceptions and sensations of concepts and snippets of narratives. Each region of effects describes the organic families and defines their functional attributes and their physical properties. A set of events, caught in the reality of Beirut, steeps the organs with their heterogeneous meanings. Each surface involves forms of matter, sensations, and specific forces of deployment in relation to their properties, such as their dimensions, their uses, their receptive capacities, and their social prestige. The blue C block displays the homogeneous relation of a liquid surface and its gaseous counterweight. whirlwinds against turbulences which create froth. Constantly blocks of blue and grey and verdigris. In one place, on the edge of two states of matter, where reality reminds man to remember the indefinite list of people hoping that the waves may suspend their imminent and funerary approaches. The war surface hammers matter so that it will be balanced in the relation of the masses being dislocated. Everything is contained in the fragmentation, blocked by a grain of sand or a keystone. The identity of everything finds its value in the support transferred onto the collaterals, onto the flow of gravity, always spilled elsewhere. Transfer of war or moral operation of Europe, which keeps the mirage of peace close to its peoples. As long as the bullet bursts the air and does not encounter the mass, the event of breakthrough and sundering is still not operative. The table announces the desire to render any proliferation of unorganized life silent. The table separates and distributes differences according to an extensive and countable scale. It silences any form of narration. It refers to its own visibility, where reason has ended up dissolving everything in an infinitely homogeneous figure. The fourth population of specificities finds its place in the interstice of the three others, and they are all borne off in the ubiquity of the in-between. As a nomadic line of do-it-yourself, it contradicts all the others, submits to their powers, but forces them all the time to become differentiated on contact with it. A family which does not name itself, but which executes. Each ensemble, during its quantitative extension towards the middle, will see its identity invariably shifted to the vicinity of the other ensembles. Inevitably, a strategy of contact operates. The cut-up, borrowed from Burroughs, is not a linguistic analogy, but a strategy enabling the different organs to meet in the chance of the fold. This economy makes it possible to turn the encounter into an event and to invent new differences freed from the identity-based control of flows which is recorded as much in the forms of the novel as in the corpus of architecture. One does not write events, one produces them. The distribution of specificities becomes the arena of a possibility of multiplicities. The permanent development of a thing that is forever changing states under the intensity of an event. The cut-up gets something to happen. Understood as a force opening a break in the process of identification, it tolerates all manner of functional dispersal and imposes a politics of vicinity necessary for expansion. In the method of this operation, subjectivities are bothered in their schemes of existence and their models of representation by the hazardous invention of unlikely vicinities of emergent differences. In freeing itself from all organizational totality, the meaning of distribution occurs through liaison of organs of an identical or foreign family. Each plan will organize its functional progression in accordance with a system of vicinity. Space is developed through a principle of contact which opens onto another sense each time. The event expresses organic alteration, while at the same time defining, in the indiscernible series, vicinities with degrees of differentiation, capable of new passages of effects. In the coextensive movements of organic series, form will appear in its particular way of functioning. Each organic family is updated in the simultaneous distribution and the vicinity of the others, and no higher principle of integration in a structure or a system of idea and spatial figure intervenes in this principle of vicinity. The organs are connected to one another and release contact zones beyond suspicion for reason. The largest organs are the first to be affixed to the original surfaces, and the numbers of encounters are increased at the same time as the smaller organs appear and are intertwined. The organic density grows gradually from the expansion towards the centre, with their own speeds. The relations of vicinities deal with their identities. The number of relations of vicinity is incalculable. The sums exceed the number and make it impossible to decide how to hierarchize the different functions. Make no more plans, or no longer make creation too calculable. The general movement of distribution follows a line of least resistance of organs when it comes to merging with the general rule of relations. With each encounter, thought has, as a challenge, the fact of contracting in the economy of a lesser integration of specificities. At each encounter, reason must go to work in the economy of its possibilities, while at the same time sidestepping the temptation to organize the parts on the basis of the unity of a whole. Every time that an organ clashes with the spatial expansion of another, the power play that confronts them remains as neutral as possible. Otherwise put, the efforts to articulate the different organs minimize the transformation from one to the other. With each vicinity, the qualitative forces become muddled in order to assert the nature of each thing. Cohabitation can be read in the flesh of each protagonist concerned by the encounter. At the end of the organic extension, a countless set of elements differentiated during the relations of vicinity are arranged without one being able to discern their original belonging to any peripheral plan. The interference of the organic sets has little by little dissolved the features peculiar to each original plan. The heart sees its walls like the intertwining of these last undifferentiated elements. As the small organs arrive, the speed of differentiation has risen, and the attributes of the four regions give way to a multiplicity of traces of this process of differentiation on the hazardous surface of the black hole. The intensive multiplicities appear at the end of this genesis, in the hollow of the selective dissemination of the smallest specificity. Depending on the quantities, this environment is defined by the encounter of all the conflictual accidents and their articulation. The end of the arrangements defines the black hole, an empty centre. The matter has stopped. An urban place where effects penetrate each other and become muddled, a dark, damp place. One enters it from the street, watered by a screed of lead and the continuous noise of the mechanical flow. The sound dies away, and we find ourselves at the end of an architecture saturating itself from its interior to the exhaustion of the quantitative and controllable data. All that remains are forms of matter embedded in each other, where passages of effects, like beams of light, weave their way into the pores of the organization. There remains this empty heart, an urban cul-de-sac, or urban end, become foreign to itself by dint of differentiation of programmed and standardized identities. Entrails of a beast hostile to the intensity of a city, in the East at the beginning of a millennium, whose exaggerated excitation imbues a fear of no longer moving. Entrails of a settled beast, measuring beneath the screed of blinding light of the cybernetic age, the brutality of its operation, of its genetics, deferring the circumscription of rational integration.